Do you feel like every year you're losing a little bit of ground financially to your friends in your peer group? If so, today's video is for you. I've been a financial advisor now for over 20 years, and these are the top 12 milestones all of us need to hit before we turn 30. So let's jump in. And the first one's going to surprise you. I'm not going to start with budgeting. You know, the secret to solving any financial challenge is there's really three parts to it. You can focus on the expenses, you can focus on the revenues, or you can cheat. I don't cheat, and I don't think you cheat either. So you know what, solving financial issues, it sure is a lot easier to solve those issues looking at the revenues than looking at the expenses. So let's talk about that. How do you increase your revenues? How do you increase your income? And for many of us, there's really two things we can do. We can either change jobs a little more frequently. Many studies have shown that. People that are willing to change their jobs every 2 to 3 years over their lifetime are going to make dramatically more than people that stay with one company for 10, 12 years. It's just the reality. Companies pay more to get people in, and once they feel like they've got you, they kind of take advantage of you. So that's one thing, is to change jobs. But the other thing that might be much more durable and much more impactful is to level up your skills. Look at what you're doing now and say, is there the next level of this skill that I could do that would bring me a lot more money? Or do you need to change industries and develop a new skill level? So think through that, and for many people, it's early in your career, particularly in your 20s, I think it's fine to meander and to really look for where your passion is, but invest money in leveling up. And that doesn't mean that you got to sign up for some of these crazy expensive internet courses that you hear YouTubers talking about. What it does mean is look at what you're getting paid now and say, what's the next level? How could I get a 25 or a 50% increase in my wages? Let me give you an example. One of my daughters is in her 20s, and she used to work a retail job, and she decided that she's going to school to be a nurse, and she decided, you know, what if I became a nurse assistant, a CNA, a certified nursing assistant? So it took her less than 40 hours to go through this program. It cost her less than $500, and she went from making minimum wage to making 3 times minimum wage over the course of a couple weeks. That's a powerful thing. And now with that, now she can work fewer hours and actually be making more money. And then with that extra time, she can reinvest again and continue to increase how much money she's making. So that's number one, is I want you to think about leveling up your skills and what do you need to do about it. Now let's just talk about some adulting things. You know, the truth is, here in the United States, your credit score means a lot. It's gonna impact how much a car loan is gonna cost you. It's gonna impact when you buy your first home, what your mortgage rate is gonna be. It's gonna impact the cost of a lot of things in your life. So have a good credit score. Look at your credit score. The big 3 credit agencies once a year have to give you a free credit report. And it's something like at least 1/3 of all people have inaccurate information on their credit report. So it definitely makes sense once a year to look at your credit score. Make sure it's correct. If it's not correct, get it corrected, because you don't want to have to pay more when you get a car loan, when you get a mortgage. You don't want to have to pay more than what you have to for that kind of debt. Number 3, get an emergency fund. And what I mean by that is having 3 to 6 months of living expenses set aside in a bank. Sadly, that's not getting that much interest. I guess in today's world, you might be able to get 4 or 5%. But you want to have that emergency fund, not just so that you can weather a storm, but I think more importantly, so that you have staying power, so that if you lost your job, you would have options as to what you do next, and you could pick the job that's perfect for you as opposed to the first job that comes along. Because you know what they call you if you take the first job that comes along? Eventually, they're gonna call you somebody that's left behind, because the first job offer you get is likely not gonna be your best job offer. And even if it is, can you negotiate an even better deal? And so an emergency fund gives you all of this, plus, you know, unfortunately, over half of all Americans, including people making over $100,000 a year, say that they could not pay for an unexpected $1,000 expense. I don't want that to be you, so build an emergency fund. Okay, let's keep going. Now you're really adulting when you start looking at putting money into a retirement account. But specifically, if your company has a 401k, and 3/4 of all American companies offer a 401k, make sure that you're getting that free money, which is your company's match. If your company says, hey, if you put in 2%, if you put in 1%, if you put in 5%, we're going to match that money. That's free money to you. So I want you to take advantage of it. There is nowhere else you're going to get a guaranteed 100% return. Okay, the next one. It's not enough to just save money. If you're in your 20s, if you haven't turned 30 yet, you have a long time horizon. So it's not enough to just save. You also have to invest. So I want you to start thinking about investing. As you're building up, first starting to save, first starting to invest, I want you to keep it simple. When you're saving your first $20,000, $30,000, there's nothing wrong with putting that in a broad market index that's going to get you exposure to a broad segment of the American companies, US companies. If you live in a foreign country, maybe look at your country, the companies in your country as well. But for many of us, investing in US companies is going to be a good strategy for us. I'm not going to mention specific names of these index funds, but I think you know what those are. So broad market indices, keep it simple early on. And then as you get closer to $50,000 or $100,000, then you can start talking about making it more complicated. But it's just super important you start saving and you start investing. Keep the investing simple. Let it get complicated later in your life, or like me, I don't believe in complicated investment strategies. Number 7, I want you to think, you're gonna laugh at this, I want you to think about negotiating your bills. You know, here in the United States, we don't negotiate many bills, where in many parts of the world they do. If you're in South America, you better believe you're negotiating how much money you're paying for the propane gas supplier, how much money you're paying for the drinking water supplier that comes by, how much money you're paying for anything that gets brought to your house, how much money if you need help moving something. You're negotiating each and every one of those. Here in the United States, we think, oh, we don't negotiate that much. But you know what? I'll give you a classic example. Look at your internet bill. And I double dog dare you to call your internet service provider and say, you know what? I'm canceling. And you can get another internet service provider in a heartbeat, right? But once you tell them you're canceling, they're gonna bring out the red carpet. They're gonna offer you all kinds of deals. And I usually do this once a year, once every other year myself personally. It works beautifully. So I double dog dare you, try that, and I think you're gonna be happy with what you find out. The next one, number 8, is kind of heresy coming from a financial advisor, but you should probably have a credit card. You know, in the United States, credit cards is kind of how we pay for a lot of things. Now there's a lot of money apps, but you know, having a regular US credit card I think is also important. Helps establishing your credit. But you know what? Make sure you pay each and every one of those payments on time. It only takes like 1 or 2 missed payments out of 100. So think of that. Over an 8-year stretch, you pay late once or twice, it's going to dramatically impact your credit score. So get a credit card, but make sure you pay for it on time each and every month. No excuses ever. Okay, the next one, start saving for a down payment on a house. Real estate has been one of the ways that the middle class has been able to generate and build up their long-term wealth. And yes, prices are higher, and are they gonna go higher still? I don't know in the short term. But you know what? I know in the long term that I shouldn't say I know, highly likely that in the long term, and what I mean by the long term is 10 plus years, maybe even 20. I think you're gonna look back and you'll be glad that you invested in real estate. And what I mean by that is your primary residence. Make sure it's a payment that you can comfortably make, right? And there's lots of videos on YouTube that will tell you what that is, but be modest there. But I want you to start saving up for a down payment, so at least it's your option whether you do that or not. Number 11, and you can see where I feel about budgets here because, okay, spoiler alert, that's number 12. Number 11 is set up a will, and you might laugh and say, what do I need a will for? I'm 20. You know, unfortunately, 20-year-olds get in car accidents, right? Unfortunately, 20-year-olds do occasionally die unexpectedly and early. So have a will so that, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but have a will so that if you were to pass, where your financial assets go, that's been decided. Because if you don't have a will, guess what? The state that you live in has a will for you. It's called dying intestate. And you may not want your money to go, your hard-earned money to go, where the state kind of defaults to, so have a will. And then number 12 is to have a budget. I'm not a huge fan on budgets. Some of us need budgets. There were times in my life where I needed budgets, but you know what? It's not a whole lot of fun to have a budget. What I'd rather do is say, I want to save so much a month, and whether that's $1,000 a month, $100 a month, or $5,000 a month, that'd be a lot of money. But regardless of what that number is, if you can hit that without a budget, why go through the pain of tracking every time you go to Starbucks, of every time you buy a new piece of clothing at the mall? Just set a target for how much you want to save each month. And if you can hit that number, you're good. And if you're not hitting that number, maybe you do need to save. So those are the top 12. I also want you to think about how, the differences between owning and renting and whether you should own a house. And for that reason, I want you to watch this video here. I'll see you in there. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.